So next up, I am eager to welcome our next speaker, Simon Phillips. He currently works as the Learning Manager for Catalina Marketing. He is engaged at all levels to enhance skill development and knowledge acquisition. His primary focus is to really optimize learning for his audience, which includes modeling metrics, modeling for metrics, and sustainability. Today, he'll be sharing how those entering or currently working in the field of learning and development can use data to make improvements within their org. One of my favorite topics, making the decision to become data-driven. Simon, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. It looks like we are up and running. I'm glad we actually have some attendees. I know that data can get a little bit dry at sometimes, but on we go. If we don't mind, cue the deck. So today, I really want to pick up a little bit on what some of the other sessions that you heard today, and I hope you were able to attend some of the previous. I'm looking at the attendee list, and I could see that some of you were already earlier engaged, so we thank you and welcome. I'm going to go a little bit deeper today, maybe a little bit more technical. Don't be scared, but I'll go easy on you for sure. So just to introduce myself, I normally do a lot of these events in person, and honestly, I was planning to have Pearl Jam play today, and my good friend Eddie Vedder introduced me, but we had to pass for the virtual delivery here today. I'm located in St. Pete, Florida. We're known for our sunshine, our art scene, and retirees. And these are my two little ones. They are my sunshine, my art scene, and they are preventing me from retiring. And I work for an organization called Catalina Marketing, and we use real-time data for precise targeting for retail and brand promotion. So you elected to join here today for making the decision to become data-driven. So some of the topics that we're going to cover is, what is a world without data? How do I really need it? Why do I really need it? Which data can be captured? How can I communicate it? And to give you a few key takeaways. We will be pausing a few times for some polls as well as some Q&A within the session instead at the end, just to see if there's any immediate questions. So I'll be pausing and monitoring for some of those. And our expectations today, please learn something, but don't try to remember all the content since a lot of it's going to be shared out and you can view it later as well. But take away today, see the value of measurement and be motivated to drive deeper value within your organization. And value is an important term. And you're going to hear many rhetorical questions, a lot of thought-provoking that I'm going to include with you today. So we're going to head off to our first poll. So speaking on engagement and getting people, let's hear from our audience. So cue poll 1, please. What is your experience with training data and measurement? Take a second to review and give me your best response, please. Okay, so it looks like we've done a lot of some foundational data collection, so that's important to know. So I'll go ahead and continue. I appreciate your insight. That's going to be perfect for today. So what is a world without data? Can you actually believe that that could exist, right? What does that environment look like? And which of these may you recognize within your organization? You get a lot of random opinion-based results. You may hear a lot of subjective interpretations about correlates, arguments about what actual success correlates look like. It's because of this, it's because I did this, it's because we trained, it's because of this. And then also too, you've got non-measured trainer performance reviews. So to trainers out there and those involved, I'm going to ask, so where is your value? And are you going to be cut after the free coffee goes? Just throwing it out there. So when it comes to showing the value of your project or program, a few things to keep in mind. Always remember, hope is not a strategy. Luck is not a factor. And doing nothing is not an option. Then I'm going to have you ask yourself this. Does senior leadership see your work as an expense or value add? Rhetorical again, you get lots of them. So what is value to your organization? So if you could please review this list. These are some of the things that you can capture. And what's important to you and your organization. If you could just throw those into the chat, pick one or two real quick. I just like to kind of see what people are thinking. What are measures that is important to your organization? How do you know? Cost. Thank you, Kyle. That's a big one, isn't it? So ultimately, how do you know which of the measures are important? Barriers and enablement, competency, skill. There we go, rolling in. Productivity, sales. And how do you know, and have you actually asked the right questions? That's very, very important. Success with use. Concepts and trends are valuable. There we go. We've got someone with data. Thanks, Denise. Reputation, quality, time. Absolutely. So why do I really need it? Well, you got to show your value, especially as a trainer. You got to be productive and control the narrative. So be sure that you know, again, who needs to know about the data and measurement from the training results. Now, what do they really care about? Are you moving the metrics needle? And here's a hint. CEOs want impact and ROI measure data. And do you recognize these from the list we just reviewed right there at the bottom? So can data predict the future? Absolutely. Hopefully you're familiar with these lead and lag indicators. You've heard these before. Your data and measurement shows current state. An analysis of the data shows trending and future states. So yes, you can predict the future. That's value. Let's talk about the reality of remembering. So during training, do you ever feel like you're just throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks? Everyone's nodding their head. Well, here's some evidence for you. Hopefully you can see that on your screen. So by sometime next week, you'll have forgotten almost 40% of what you learned today. And perhaps you only learned about 20% of the content actually today. So you should be solid with 8%. So therefore, training is not a one and done. Value is derived through application and repetition. So reinforce, apply, measure. Reinforce, apply, measure. But what's the reality of your training requests? Let me ask you this. Do you accept every training request that comes your way? Do you want to be that person always willing to say yes? Well, you got to be careful. If you really want to add value, you actually have to minimize taking on the responsibilities of others. So how many of your requests are actually not a training problem? Does this look like fun to you guys? So if the goal of training is to change behavior, are you asking the right questions? If you can't significantly change the behavior, how can you measure it? So should you even be involved? Another rhetorical question. So this is the major in PIPE's performance analysis flow diagram. You have to memorize it by the end of the session. I'm just kidding. So look at all the steps in this 2-column chart. And I want you to notice all the way to the bottom of column 2, this is where training resides. So look at all these other performance interventions that could take place before training should even occur. It's a very systematic process. So which kind of data is available? Well, we got to start with what's important to the business. So if all training aspects need to tie to the bottom line, correct? Then how come it's circular in nature? So if the bottom line is impacted by performance, and performance constitutes skill and competency should be defined in the job description. Your job description feeds into recruiting and training, which then again impacts the bottom line. Where do you guys start? Guys recognize the Bloom's taxonomy? Hopefully this is not new to everyone here. I almost said y'all. That was a bit of the Florida coming out at me, sorry. So in your job descriptions, do you define competencies in terms that can be measured? If yes, you have something to work with. You've got somewhere to start. But if not, what do you expect to do with that job description besides just posting it on a job board? But how deep do I need to go? This is a combined hierarchy of the common measurement platforms. You got Kirkpatrick and the Phillips Analytics. Both use the first 4 levels, but the Phillips Analytics has added that 5th level. And we use these to ensure we are measuring at the right value level. And again, which values do you need to bring to the table? Who wants to go deeper? You ready? Notice how on this you start in the upper left and you kind of work backwards up to the right. Well, just like creating a learning program where you have learning objectives and work backwards, measurement requires that the appropriate level of evaluation becomes your starting point. So whether it's only a survey or you're doing a complete ROI study. Next, we're going to review the specific levels, but I'm going to first pause to see if we have any questions in the Q&A in chat. So which data can be captured? And I'm going to go through this list like we saw in the hierarchy. So level 1 is attendance, right? These are our basic inputs from the design of the program. And from that standpoint, you can track physical attendance, right? You can get a WebEx report, so to speak. But if it's virtual, is anyone trying to use any of those attention to attendance ratios, which shows that they're actually engaged with your screen? That's a great report. Are you using tasks to drive individuals to participate in tracking those within your learning opportunities? That's another measurement opportunity. But how do you know if you actually have engagement? Remember, you may have physical presence, but not their minds. Moving on to level 1. This looks like a lot of people have kind of stopped here a little bit with their measurement. These basically include surveys, also known as smile sheets. And again, are your learners engaged? Without engagement, is your worker performance suffering at the expense of the company profits or losses? Level 1 surveys are best when there are repetitive programs or processes that can be enhanced. Otherwise, does anyone really care from a business standpoint? Level 2 learning. Do you guys remember that remembering chart? Sure. Well, for quizzes and the like, you can test when the program is over and everything is fresh, but how much is being retained and what is forgotten? Did we kind of look at maybe 92% over a week potentially? So think about this. How do you know which negative impacts are affecting your business through the loss of information? Our level 3 is behavior. So if the goal of training is to change behavior and behavior drives skill, isn't this important? Has anyone seen a skills rubric before? That was rhetorical again, you don't have to answer. Where we are defining skill levels. And there should be different levels of skill expectations at your workforce. You shouldn't expect a new hire to be an expert right away. And you shouldn't expect a tenured employee to only perform basic tasks. You shouldn't expect all employees to be experts at all skills. And these levels are used to drive the competencies in your job descriptions. Junior positions require lower levels of skill, senior require higher levels of skill. Succession planning is the process of upskilling to perform at these higher levels. And as a trainer, your job is to help the organization measure these skills and define the gaps for training initiatives. Everyone follow all that? Level 4, impact, fun ones. Hopefully all the skills identified for your employees are correlated to the success of the business. Impact can be directly or indirectly correlated. Some move profits up, some can reduce losses. We may want sales up, but turnover low. We want high productivity, but low error rates. And quite often we assume that training impacts the business, but how can you prove it? I'm kind of going over level 5, and for larger training investments and programs, you might need to prove your ROI through an actual formal study. And I think we had a participant or two have been involved, so fantastic. So outside of your salaries, programs that require external resources, long development times, or contain intangible events such as HR compliance may be a really good candidate for ROI evaluation. Not an expert here, so for more information about level 5, I recommend you visit the ROI Institute website. They really know what they're doing in this space, and I am not a paid sponsor, just for the record. So how do we communicate our data? Again, back to who needs it. Before you start sharing out data, remember to ask, who needs to see it? The leaders, your C-suite, your HR performance reviews. And again, Which data do they need to see? Have you validated that value with them? Is the company willing to support the efforts to even collect the data, analyze it, and see its true value? How do they want to see it? Do you need to create dashboards, use business intelligence tools, provide newsletters for recent results? That's what that guy's doing right there. He's reading all the metric reports. Does it need to be on demand? Do you need to push it? You got to pull it. You have to be proactive or reactive. And what's that frequency? And this image here is from an actual business intelligence dashboard that I use with my employer. We show attendance and I use actual trend lines. Management can go in and look at this real time. But always remember, you are adding value by providing this information to your organization. And as a few tips to kind of take away from today, map your competencies to activities that can be measured. Only choose the measurements needed for the business and what your business is willing to allocate the time towards. Timing of data collection is critical. When is the business able to give you that information instead of you trying to force it out, getting them involved? I like this one. I like peer pressure. So with all the data that I collect, I go ahead and provide measurement awards annually to highlight our top performers. And that kind of creates a little bit of motivation within and some jabbing at the leadership levels and I win. But it gets people involved, right? It gets them engaged. And finally, don't be afraid of data. It could become your best friend. So before I go into kind of a final poll, I see a question. If you use profit or losses as the ROI in a training, would you use that in a public sector environment? Well, ultimately, I don't think the sector ultimately matters except just showing validation that we were able to get return. And a lot of these measures will be done on intangible events where we are needing to focus on loss reduction, often more so than actual profit. And so my opinion, it's that sector really doesn't make much of a difference ultimately, especially if someone's willing to provide the time and energy to go in and conduct the impact study, whether you're doing it yourself or you're bringing in an external partner. So from today, let's go back to our polling station. I'll give it just a second. So let's do our poll on what resonated with you most today. All right. So were you feeling motivated or are you thinking the session is finally over? Let's hear some of that feedback from you, please. And again, as a reminder, these are recorded and the deck will be out there if you'd like to see some of those charts, if those are going to be of value for you. So currently I am seeing, I better understand. Okay, good. That's an important needle. Connecting between job descriptions and business impact. No one's saying yet they're confused. Fingers crossed. Not anyone said I already knew this stuff. No one said the session's finally over, but I'll still hold. Someone said the session's finally over. Sorry, guys. All right, so it looks like I would say most people are saying they better understand why we should measure. All right, I think that's resounding. Good. And so maybe some in HR are seeing maybe more of the connection between job descriptions or impacts and ensuring that those job descriptions contain competencies that can be measured. All right. Well, I thank you everyone for your time. I think we got a few minutes left. We'll check to see if there's any other questions. Finished up a little bit soon, which is okay. I do appreciate your time and I hope that you are enjoying the conference. And again, I'll just stand by if there's any more questions.
All right. Thank you, Simon. My wheels in my head are spinning still right now. Simon, we did have a question come in, and I mean, obviously there was a ton of information. If you had to pick, what would you say, if there was one key takeaway here, what would you want people to walk away with?
Understand what the business needs before we dive in and start collecting all this data that no one necessarily wants. That would be my opinion.
Got it. And this is actually just a question from me, and I'm very interested to hear your thoughts. How do you recommend someone use data to influence decisions? Because I think that's something that a lot of people don't do, but if you do it right, I think it can really help you.
So, well, there's a validation aspect and there's a value too, but I guess we have to say, what decisions are we looking at? Is it with a shift in the workforce? Is it on hiring? Is on how we're driving performance? So I think I'd have to ask for validation more.
I mean, I think you could say any of those, but I guess in the workforce, just to keep it relevant.
Just to keep it relevant.
I mean, I don't want to go off on a tangent to hiring and recruiting, but let's keep it to the workforce.
Well, which is part of it, right? That's an input. That's an input measure ultimately, right?
Yeah.
What was your question again? I got sidetracked.
How can you use data to influence decisions when you need to make changes around the workforce? And I think if you think about that, a lot of people may want to show their employer or their company, like, hey, we need to be moving more toward distributed or more, like, how can they use data to influence that?
Well, I think to me, the most important thing is going to be the level 3, which is the skill and behavior, and being able to map that to the competencies and show where your gaps are. To me, I think that's where you proactively are helping the business make decisions on, do we have the right talent, right, to drive through and meet the actual performance expectations, which are going to have our business impact. To me, I think that's the biggest part.
Yeah, no, I like that. That makes sense. We had a question come in from Kyle. Kyle says, curious as to your thoughts on intangible, non-measurable, feel-good benefit of training.
Whew. Well, that's very subjective. Yeah, intangible, non-measurable, feel-good benefits of training. So the question is, why are we doing it? Is it because the organization asked, or we feel that we're actually trying to change something? And I think there's many times where we are asked to do something, especially if it comes from higher up. And doing something for the sake of doing something, I think it depends on what the frequency of training is in your organization. And is it something that I'm just trying to fill a gap? Or is it because someone says, hey, we have this problem. We don't know if it really is an issue. I think it is, but we're just going to go ahead and check the box because we say that we've done it. And so your learners, and I think some of the other sessions that we had today were talking about this, means you're going to get a little bit of burnout if we're doing so much virtually. So I think we got to be careful on really trying to provide some of those. And does it need to be live, or can I think about an alternative delivery instead of taking up people's time to go through non-measurable feel-good benefits? And is it really need to be training? So I would just say, think about an alternate delivery to get some of those things out. So that would be my interpretation.
I like that. Great response. All right. Well, thank you so much, Simon. This was incredibly informative. And as a reminder, these will be recorded and you will have access so that you can go through this again. I'm sure if you watch it again, you'll learn something new every time.